Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World. Hey, what's up, Elijah? It's good to see you over there on the Facebook page, over there on YouTube. I'm, of course, your host, David On Point Huffman. On today's episode of The Prime, we're going to preview the 2026 UFL season. United Football League, if you're a spring football fan, has tried to be the number one hub for all things spring football. Hopefully you guys continue to ride with us. We're going to talk about all the things, all the changes, and you can talk a little bit about each individual team going into the season. It starts just in over 7 or 8 days now, next Friday, when the DC Defenders, I don't remember who they play in that first game. Let me see. What's it? UFL opening night? So the first game of the season is going to be the Birmingham Stallions under AJ McCarron going up against the Louisville Kings in the first game of the season. That'll be on Friday, March 27th. So just over 9 days from today. We'll talk more about the league change, all the rule changes, all the teams in new cities, all the stuff. Please like, share, subscribe if you do like what we're doing here at Prime Sports World. We will be swinging into the WWE tomorrow on Prime Sports World on Point Wrestling Entertainment. So you don't want to miss any of that content. If you like what we're doing here at Prime Sports World, please like, share, subscribe to the podcast. My name is David On Point Huffman. I should be here with TJ Hopkins. Splash F1M. I don't know what that means, but appreciate your comment. Keep it comment related to the UFL if you can, please. Let's first talk about the season. Changes to know about. First, we got 4 new teams. Well, technically 3 new teams, and then we kind of rebranded one other team. So we have, obviously, DC Defenders, defending champions in this league, the Birmingham Stallions, the Dallas Renegades, with Mr. Spring Football himself, Luis Perez, the St. Louis Battlehawks. We have the Houston Gamblers, who were the Houston Roughnecks formerly. They go back to their original USFL team. And then we got 3 expansion teams, as we have lost the Brahmas, the Michigan Panthers, and the Memphis Showboats. They have become the Columbus, Ohio Aviators, the Louisville Kings, and the Orlando Storm. Orlando had a team in the original XFL, the Guardians. They did not return in the most recent version of the UFL, but they do now, as we have the Orlando Storm back into this league. For the UFL. I don't know what to make of it. I liked the Michigan Panthers. I thought that was a pretty good football team. They were good in the USFL, and they were the runners-up last season in the championship. Came up short against the DC Defenders. There must be some reason that they moved these teams. There must be profitability as they move into different cities. They must think that these markets are going to be more heavily favored for these kind of markets. I know I used to live in Columbus, Ohio, and I have a lot of friends that are actually going to go to a bunch of their games. And I think maybe some of them even bought season tickets to the UFL. They did a good job of branding this. You know, they got 10 weeks. They're going to have 21 regular season, postseason games across Fox and FS3. ESPN is going to show 22 regular season, postseason games on ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, and on their app. There'll be a 43-game schedule across all the leagues. This is the 3rd season of the league. This is the season going up. You got And then obviously I talked about this a little bit earlier. They obviously have rebranded the conferences. No longer are you going to have the XFL and the UFL being a different conference. Now who's going to make the playoffs? It's going to be the top 4 teams, regardless of division, with the best record will make the playoffs, and they will go up against each other in the 14 playoff. I like this changes. I always thought it was kind of stupid to have a division winner because last season we had a really one of the divisions was super stacked, and their teams obviously didn't make the playoffs because 2 teams from each division got to make the playoffs. This is a little more balanced. It's a little more fair. I like it. And then they're going to have a 4-point field goal. So for any field goal that is over 60 yards, that will now count towards 4 points. I don't know how to feel about this, to be totally honest with you. It kind of feels because, field goal kickers can now kick 60-yarders in their sleep. We see it in the National Football League. Jake effing Bates, I should say, from the former Michigan Panthers is now in the Detroit Lions because of what he did in the UFL and kicking long field goals. It gives the opportunity to get your name out there, and the 4 points, it could be a complete game changer for the league. A league I know that TJ, who's normally a panelist here on the show with me, is not crazy about is the no punts inside the 50-yard line. You basically could just get rid of punters in the UFL. They're not going to be used a ton in this league. Because if you get the kickoff, you get the ball at the 30-yard line. If you just get 2 first downs, you're already in a position where you're not going to be able to punt the football away. I kind of think it takes away from strategy a little bit. It does promote aggressive football, and it does promote a more entertaining product. But I think that punting situation should be a completely coach decision. It shouldn't be a league rule where you're not allowed to kick punts inside the 50. Tush push banned. A lot of talk in the National Football League about getting this banned. Hasn't happened yet, but it does happen in the UFL. I don't really care. So we'll just go with that. 1 foot catch rule. They go to the rule that we saw in college, where you only need to have 1 foot in bounds in order to be a completed pass. I guess it's just going to allow for more entertaining football. I would have preferred, because this is supposed to be the pros, it's supposed to be a pro style product. I would have preferred that the 2 foot rule stayed. But that's neither here nor there. I wouldn't have made this change. Then updated point after format. So before this season, obviously, as many people know, there were no extra points in the UFL. That is no longer the case. So in this new version of the UFL, you could still go for the 1, the 2, and the 3-pointer. But instead of it being a 2-point conversion, a 1-point conversion from the 2-yard line, that's now an traditional extra point, I think, from the 35. Then you have a 2-pointer from the 4-yard line. That used to be out at 5. And then you have a 3-pointer, which is now at the 8-yard line, which used to be at the 10. I guess it just gives kicker more opportunity to showcase their stuff and potentially become, make their way into the National Football League. Also should be allowed for more points to be scored in a UFL game. I wouldn't have made this change either. I liked the fact that you had to legitimately earn extra points. It wasn't just a field goal. It wasn't just a gimme shot. I like the fact that you had to convert basically all of the points conversions or to get points on the board. And I think those extra point rules kind of made the UFL stand out in the league among its own. I'm not a fan of this rule. I think I would have left it alone. And then obviously new overtime format. They're going to go back to kind of the college overtime rules where you get the ball, I think, at the 15-yard line, and you got 3 shots to score. And if you're not able to do it, they're going to get it back to the old football team. And then the old kickoff is back for the UFL. The one that the National Football League now uses, the UFL was the one that originated that, or actually it was technically the XFL. They originated that kickoff rule. They're now bringing it back into the UFL. I love that kickoff rule in the beginning. They should never have gone away from it. It was something that made their league unique, and it was something that was uniquely theirs. It never made sense to get rid of it. I'm glad it's back. But those are the major changes that you got to know heading into this season's UFL season. Let me know what you think about any of this stuff going on in the UFL, from the new teams to the conference changes to the 4-point field goal, no punts inside the 50, the tush push banned. Would you like to see that? Would you still like to see that get banned in the National Football League? Or are you okay with the way it is in the NFL? The 1-foot catch, back to the college rule for the UFL, the updated point after format, the new overtime format, and then the old kickoff has returned for the UFL heading into 2026. Let me know down in the comment section how you feel about any of this stuff. And let's talk about each individual football team as we get into, the nitty gritty of this podcast. Again, This is Prime Sports World. Please like, share, subscribe to the podcast if you like what we're doing here. And I'm David On Point Huffin. We got 5 teams that have been here before, 3 teams that are brand spanking new, and we got to start at the top. And we got to start with the team that won this league last year. Let's talk about the DC Defenders. Obviously, their 6-4 record from last year. They went on to win the championship. They knocked off the St. Louis Battlehawks, and then they knocked off the Michigan Panthers in a rout in the final game of the season last year. Obviously, they got Shannon Harris coming back. He was the interim coach last year. Took him to the finals, took him to the championship. Going to return to the head coach of this football team. Jordan Tiamu, a mainstay in spring football, will be the starting quarterback for this football team. Notable offensive players. Obviously, got Abram Smith. Obviously, he was banged up last season coming off. I think it was an ACL tear or an Achilles tear. But I would be lying to you if I really remembered. But either way, yeah, he should be a good. He should be ready to go for this season. And they got Kiki Kuti, a pretty solid wide receiver at the wide receiver position for the DC Defenders. And then they got pretty good defensive backs, as they had a pretty good secondary last year. Leon O'Neal Jr., Gary and Conley, who had a cup of coffee in the National Football League, and Deontay Anderson, all at the defensive back position. And the DC Defenders home field advantage. They're well known for that beer snake, something that I talk about here at Prime Sports World all the time. From there, we got to go into the Birmingham Stallions, who are a staple in successful spring football as they regularly make the playoffs. Won the championship, I think, 3 years in a row. So they were 2-time USFL champion, and then they won the inaugural UFL season. They come into this with a brand new head coach, AJ McCarron, who played in Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Was the starting quarterback for the St. Louis Battlehawks. For the first couple seasons they were there, and then in the first season in the UFL, sat out last season, and now is the head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. He's replaced Skip Holtz, who had a very successful tenure for the Birmingham Stallions. And then their quarterback is probably going to be Matt Corral, but Jaron Hall is on this roster, former draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. And then they got some noteworthy players at the wide receiver position. Deion Kane, an absolute staple when it comes to spring football. Dawood Davis, who came over in free agency. And they also have Anthony McFarland on this roster as well. Deion Kane, he had over 1,000 yards as a Stallion over the last couple seasons. They also have Justin Ross, big-time star in Clemson. Was drafted in the National League, but never really panned out. They have John Ross, Dawood Davis, was an all UFL receiver with the Showboats 2 seasons ago, one of the fastest wide receivers in the league. Sorry, my Facebook just went. And then they have the former NFL player, Laviska Shenault, 2,300 yards all-purpose in the National Football League with 8 touchdowns as he's kind of bounced throughout the league, but now he's going to be in the UFL. Should have an opportunity to really shine in this league. And then they have Jordan Thomas, tight end, a absolute man-child as a weapon in the UFL. I don't believe because that guy should be an absolute menace on offense for the Birmingham Stallions for this season. And then going into their notable defensive players, I apologize in advance. I'm going to say Keva Tenzo, the linebacker for this football team, is just an absolute tackling machine at the linebacker position for the Birmingham Stallions. But yeah, fifth season as a linebacker, 8 to 10 tackles per season. He's a good football player and should be an absolute day one contributor for this football team. And then Lance Boykin, also defensive back for this football team, along with Trey Norwood, another defensive back, Coastal Carolina for Lance Boykin. And Stephen Gilmore returns to Burning. Returns to this game as well. Yeah, Trey Norwood was on this football team last year, returns again for this roster. Should be a notable contributor for the football team for the Birmingham Stallions. And then to the St. Louis Battlehawks with the best record in the UFL last season, as they got off to a kind of a slow start. I do believe they lost their first 2 weeks of the season. Then they rattled off 8 wins straight. We're one of the hottest teams heading into the season, but they were knocked off by the DC Defenders, eventual league champions, in the first round of the UFL playoffs. They have a brand new head coach. Anthony Beck is now the head coach of the Orlando Storm. They bring in former NFL wide receiver Ricky Proehl to be the head coach of this football team, and Brandon Silvers it will be the quarterback for the St. Louis Battlehawks. When he came into the scenario for the Battlehawks last season, he really stabilized that offense for the St. Louis Battlehawks and really made them a product worth watching. So Brandon Silvers gives them some definite star power at the quarterback position. But I think when we're really talking about where this team has all the talent in the world, it's the skill positions. Dravion Howard replaced Jacob Sailors last season after he went over to the National Football League. He comes over, should be a day one contributor for Dravion Howard. And he had the longest run in UFL regular season history last season. So look for him to build on that success. And then at the wide receiver position, somebody who needs no introduction, Akeem Butler, who's been just an absolute mainstay for spring football, elite scoring threat, one of the best deep ball players in the UFL. Akeem, the Dream, as they call him in the UFL. The dude is just incredible. He gave us one of the best moments in sports history last season where he scored a 67-yard touchdown, and then he swears in a live interview, and then he steps back onto the field and has another explosive touchdown in a game against the Mission Panthers last season. Akeem Butler is just a megabug boys when it comes to this particular league. And then they also brought in Ja'Cory Pearson. He had a little bit of a down season last year as he was banged up a little bit, but he did lead the XFL in receiving yards in 2023. Going into a better offensive system, going into should have an opportunity to really play well. He played really well with the Sea Dragons when Ben DiNucci was throwing him the football. Ja'Cory Pearson should be a day one contributor for this football team and really make a huge difference. And then at the tight end position, they have James Bostic. He has a really big frame. He was played a little bit of wide receiver in college and for most of his career. But I think they're going to try to put him into the tight end position. Should be a good football player for the St. Louis Battlehawks as they look to continue their success that they had in 2026. Really, in general, the Battlehawks have been one of the more successful teams in spring football. So they'll look to continue that trend moving forward. From there, we got the Dallas Renegades, who used to be the Arlington Renegades. They were 5-5 last season, but they did win 2 in a row down the stretch there to kind of solidify themselves. That should say 2025. That's frustrating. Oh, they're all wrong. Oh. I hate when stuff like that happens. Oh, they're not all wrong. There's just some of them. Sorry, hold on. All right. They won the last 2 games of the season. They've ended the season 5-5. Rick Neuheisel is the new head coach of this particular football team. And then, of course, at the quarterback position, they have Mr. Spring Football himself, Mr. Luis Perez, the Spring King, as he is affectionately called. He's the spring football's longest tenured quarterbacks, playing for several different franchises. But he's been on this Renegades team for the last 4 seasons, I think, because he did take them to the final. He wanted them a championship their first year in the league before the merger. He's been an absolute mainstay of spring football. He's an absolute, he has a really good arm strength. He could just make good football decisions. Look for Luis Perez to continue his successful play there for the Arlington or Dallas Renegades. Sorry, Texas Renegades. Tate Hunter, the running back, comes back for his 3rd season. He just has a knack for finding small creases and holes, the ability to shift it into higher gear. He's just a really good running back for the Texas Renegades. Tyler Vaughns is a wide receiver. He was on this team last season. He came back here now. Tall receiver, similar to CeeDee Lamb, obviously without the CeeDee Lamb skills. He has swift feet. You pair him up with a smooth route running and high verticality. He's made a match made in heaven for any quarterback. And then they have a couple former NFL players at the wide receiver position, including Denzel Mims. He had a stint with the Battlehawks last season. He played a little bit in the National Football League. Had a cup of coffee, I guess, in the National Football League. Emmanuel Butler, another guy who played in the National Football League, returning there as well. But yeah, he should be a guy that should really blossom there in the UFL. And then at the tight end position, you got a Gunnar Oaks, just kind of a staple of spring football. And then Peyton Hendershot, the tight end position for the Dallas Renegades, could be. Was Indiana's all-time leader in reception, receiving yards. He spent a few years in the NFL playing behind Travis Kelce and Jake Ferguson in Kansas City and Dallas, respectively. Should be a major red zone threat for Luis Perez as we head into the season. And then from there, we got defensive players to keep an eye on. Willie Taylor III, elite. He had 58 going into his fourth season. In this fourth season, he has 58 tackles, 12 and a half sacks to his name so far. And he had 7 sacks last year alone. So the guy put up crazy numbers last season at the defensive end position. And then somebody who should not be a stranger to the UFL is Taco Carlton, a former top pick by the Dallas Cowboys, winning the first round a few years ago. And now he's on the Dallas Renegades. He joined the team halfway through, making an instant impact. And he won a UFL championship, obviously, with the Stallions in 2024. Should be a difference maker for the Dallas Renegades. And then Donald Payne, the linebacker, he racks up 307 tackles, 5 interceptions, 4.5 sacks over the last 4 seasons. Named to the all USFL team, all XFL team. He's just been an absolute mainstay when it comes to spring football and one of the smarter linebackers in the league, and should be a really good player for this Dallas Renegades as they try to bounce back after what was just a mediocre team season for the Renegades last season. And then from there, we got the Houston Gamblers as they return after being the Houston Roughnecks last season. They were 5-5 in 2025. Kevin Sumlin, that name sounds familiar. He's the former head coach of Texas A&M, I think, before Jimbo Fisher got there. Let me look it up real quick. Yes. So Kevin Sumlin was the head football coach for Texas A&M from 2012 to 2017. He was also the head coach at Houston in 2008 to 2011. He was the head coach in Arizona. He was the analyst for Alabama. And then he was the head coach of the Houston Gamblers when they were in the USFL in 2022. And now a full circle moment for Kevin Sumlin as he's now the head coach of the Houston Gamblers again in 2026. Donovan Smith is going to be their starting quarterback. I'm going to be real honest with you. I did not know a ton about Donovan Smith, but he played in Texas Tech from 2020 to 2022, and then he went to Houston from 2023 to 2024. He did not sign with any football teams after that. He did have a tryout, but obviously didn't make the league. He was a pretty good but he needs to show improvement as a decision maker. He's got a real strong arm, 45 touchdowns to 31 picks in college. So we haven't seen him play since then, but I mean, there's got to be upside. He's been announced the starter of this team, and they need to get some stability at the quarterback position for this because it was kind of a mess last season for sure. And then some key offensive players. Obviously, they bring in Toa Tua. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. If I am, oh wait, sorry, man, I keep doing that. Nate McRae is their starting running back. Nate McRae went to Alabama or Auburn. He was in the Michigan Panthers for the last 2 seasons. He's got. For the last year out in the Michigan Panthers, 317 yards and 2 touchdowns. A physical downhill back that you kind of need. And then you got some spring football mainstays at the wide receiver position, including Justin Hall, one of the most electric players in the USFL and UFL over the past few seasons. Last season had 502 yards in 3 seasons, and then 2 years ago, 604 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2024. Justin Hall, just an absolute mainstay when it comes to UFL football. Braylon Sanders, another one. He was on the DC Defenders last season, bringing him a championship, comes over as a free agent, had over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns with DC in 2025. And then they got another guy that's just been in this system for a real long time. It's Javante Kirkland, a.k.a. The Flash. He did have a down season last year as a member of the San Antonio Bravos, but he was one of the most electric wide receivers for many years in the UFL, going back to his time. I can't remember where he was in his first season at the XFL, but the dude has just been awesome in spring football, and look for him to continue to blossom and show flashes, as he's called in the UFL in this upcoming season. And then they got Amari Rogers, who had a cup of coffee in the National Football League as he just kind of got injured and got banged up. But he is one of the better tight end prospects in the UFL. It should be a guy that Donovan Smith should be really relying on in those goal line scenarios for this football team. And then from there on the other side of the football, we're going to swing into the defensive side. Let's talk about Malik Fisher. He spent 3 seasons in DC, obviously winning the ring with them last season. But Malik had 7 sacks in 2024. He had a little bit of a slight drop in 2025, but he was still a pretty productive player for the DC Defenders last season. And then we got Marvin Moody. He returns to Houston as one of the top linebackers. Had 74 tackles and an interception last year. He was on the Roughnecks for 2 seasons. Then he comes over here to the Houston Gamblers. Should be a good football player for them as well. And then Anthony Hines III, another linebacker. He played 3 seasons again for the DC Defenders, earning all UFL honors in 2025. He was a lead leaguer in multiple categories. High IQ at the middle linebacker position, and always at the line when you need to make a play. Anthony Hines III should be a guy that you can rely on. And then another guy had a brief stint in the National Football League. Markel Roby continues to make plays here in the UFL. A third campaign with the franchise, a strong piece over the last 2 years. In 2024, he led the team in tackles with 58, and then last season, he got some of his reps taken away a little bit, but he had 38 tackles. He's got playing in both FS and the free safety and strong safety for the Houston Gamblers. It should be a pretty productive player in the UFL in 2026. And now we're going to get into the new teams and the new cities. First, starting with Columbus, going with the Aviators. Did I mention that, coaches, on the last one? Yeah, Kevin Sullivan. Yeah. We're starting with, let's do a little bit of nostalgia. If we're going to have a football team in the Columbus and you're going to be right outside of the U, you got to have Ted Ginn Jr. come back to coach this football team. Obviously, an absolute stalwart at the United States, or at the Ohio State Buckeyes, helped lead them to a national championship maybe 10, 15 years ago, something like that. I don't know. It's been a hot minute. But, you bring in a quarterback that I think has some real upside there with Jalen McClendon. Played well down the stretch last season. He started out as a backup with the Los Angeles Wildcats in 2022, played with the Vipers in 2023. But then he kind of finished out the season a little bit strong on the Houston Roughnecks. He threw for 1,400 yards. He had 6 touchdowns and 5 starts last season. He will be quarterback number 1 for this football team. And he played well down the stretch for the Roughnecks last season. Should get a real opportunity to make some big-time difference here for the Columbus Aviators. And then they bring in Toa Tua. I'm not sure if the Michigan Panthers team got just kind of transferred over here, because they do have a lot of Michigan Panther players on their roster, because I'm not exactly sure how the transfer stuff worked. But this guy was an absolute menace. He had 6 rushing touchdowns, and then he had 3 other scores in the postseason. Was just a touchdown merchant last season, and just found a way to get into the end zone with Toa Tua. And I apologize in advance, Toa, if I'm mispronouncing any part of your name. I apologize. Tate Martin, going into this, joins the fold as a former star at Washington State and Oklahoma State with over 10,000 yards and 10 touchdowns during his season alone. Scoring machine, but he never really found his footing. He's 6'3", has a huge catch radius, so Jalen McClendon should enjoy having Tay Martin as part of the path there at the wide receiver position. And then they got another former NFL player, Kiki Kism. He has been in the UFL spring football system. He goes to the Houston Roughnecks, big body wide receiver, outstanding catch radius. And because he played with the Roughnecks last season, should already have a little bit of rapport with Jalen McClendon at that wide receiver position. And then the tight end, Gunnar Oaks, another mainstay in the UFL going into his third season. He was named to the all UFL list in 2025. He did make a brief stint with the Detroit Lions, but he showcased his ability being an effective passing game with 162 yards and 2 scores last season. So he should be a pretty reliable target at the tight end position again for Jalen McClendon. Swinging into the other side of the football, we're going to talk about the defensive side. Let's first start with defensive end. Kenny Wilkes, one of the top pass rushers in spring football. He had 2 strong seasons with the Michigan Panthers, but he stepped up in a big way after Breland Speaks went to the IR. He led the league in quarterback pressures and led the opportunity. He led to an opportunity with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, that ended up not really working out, but he comes back to the UFL. Should be a difference maker for this Columbus Aviators as they try to get off to a good start in their first season. And then the linebacker, we got Tony Fields II. Going to one of the top linebackers in the entire UFL, NFL veteran, a former 5th-round pick of the Cleveland Browns, as a professional making impact plays defensively on multiple occasions. Going to be a day one starter for the Columbus Aviators. And then they got Cam Smith at the cornerback position. Had 6 interceptions and 64 pass breakups as a Gamecock last year. He did play a little bit as a rookie as for the Miami Dolphins, but injuries have kept him off the field as late. He comes into this scenario healthy, should be cornerback 1 for the Columbus Aviators. And then at the safety position, they have Henry Black. He was a former Pittsburgh Steeler. He comes back in for his second stint in the UFL. He was with the San Antonio Brahmas last season and was primarily a rotation piece in the secondary. He did spend the NFL preseason last year with the Atlanta Falcons. And then we got the Louisville Kings, the second to last new team here in the UFL in 2026. Chris Redmond is going to be the head coach of this particular football team. I would be lying to you if I said I know a lot about Chris Redmond as a football mind. Let me see if I can look him up real quick. So Chris Redmond had a cup of coffee in the National Football League. So he was a quarterback. He is 48 years old. He played for Louisville in college, and he was drafted in the round, 75th overall. He played with the Baltimore Ravens, and then he was on the practice squad for the Patriots, Titans, and then he was in the Austin Wranglers. I don't have a clue what that is. And then he played for the Atlanta Falcons from 2017 to 2011. And then he was the president of the Louisville Extreme before becoming the head coach of the Louisville Kings in 2026. And he is a Super Bowl champion. I believe he was on that Baltimore Ravens team that went to the Super Bowl in 2022. That year doesn't really match up, but I'm sure that's right. But yeah, he ends up becoming the head coach of this football team. He did spend he was in 2020, he became the owner and team president of the interior football team, the Louisville Extreme, he went to the IFL, and then his league got kicked out of the league for not meeting the minimum league obligations. I don't know. He was a assistant quarterback coach at a high school in Texas before he got named to this job. So that's okay. That's interesting. But yeah, I mean, going into that, now they have Jason Bean as their quarterback. He was drafted by the Memphis Showboats in 2024, but then spent a couple of years with the Indianapolis Colts. And then, overlapping as a wideout along with being an emergency quarterback. He finally comes over. Last time he played any meaningful football was when he played for Kansas. He played for 23 of 35 games for Kansas, throwing for 4,600 yards and 38 touchdowns across 3 seasons for the Kansas Jayhawks. He also rushed for 1,300 yards and 14 scores over his college career. He's going to be the clear number 1 choice for the quarterback position. He claims that he should be in the NFL. We'll see if you can take on the UFL before you're going to step into the NFL. Relatively unknown when it comes to the quarterback position. But they do have some running backs that have some NFL experience coming onto this roster. First of all, being Benny Snell. He was a former NFL player, drafted in the 4th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Played his college football at Kentucky, so he's no stranger to football in the state of Kentucky. But yeah, he rushed for 982 yards and 7 touchdowns while he was in the National Football League. Benny Snell is a good football player. And then James Robinson, another big name to sign with the Louisville Kings, the former Jacksonville Jaguars standout. He was an undrafted rookie and rushed for 1,000 yards in his rookie season, but injuries really delayed his career. But over that course of that career, he had 2,200 yards rushing along with 14 touchdowns. James Robinson is a good running back. Just unfortunately was banged up towards the back end of his career, never really got to reach his full potential. And then Tari Black has a ton of NFL experience, playing a bunch of games, but he only has 1 catch, but he spent 5 seasons in the NFL, 6'3", 218 pounds, running a 4.51 in the 40-yard dash. Should have an opportunity to be a legitimate threat for the Louisville Kings going forward. And then their tight end is going to be Zach Davidson. I don't know a ton about him, but he is a mammoth human being. So he was a collegiate punter and a tight end. He was 6'7". He was formerly a draft pick of the Minnesota Vikings while in college at Central Michigan. Shout out to the ship. Well, that's not Central Michigan, Central Missouri. 894 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns in 1 season in college football, which is an absolute crazy number. But Zach Davidson, 6'7", but we'll see how he looks in the UFL. To the other side of the football, swinging into the defensive side, we have Jalen Allen at the defensive end position. So he's looking to build off his 2025 campaign. You got to remember, so it does seem like the Memphis Showboats moved over and became this football team. You got to remember about Memphis. They were one of the worst teams in the league last year. And so the fact that they have some pieces that are going to be able to bounce back and put into rotation here. But yeah, it looks to build off his 2025 campaign. He's got motor. He can drop into coverage a little bit when needed. But he did spend some time with the 49ers this past offseason. So we'll see how that ends up working out for them. And then Cam Gill, the linebacker, 2-time NEC Defensive Player of the Year. He won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, including recording a sack on Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl, helping Tom Brady win ring number 6 or 7, whatever number that is. But he brings an NFL predicate to the table that most don't possess, especially on this particular roster for the Louisville Kings. And then Cameron Dantzler, another guy who's been bounced around the league a little bit, former 3rd-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings, bounced around the NFL for a few years, but now he's been in the UFL for the last couple seasons, played excellent for the Memphis Showboats last season, and then earned at least a look with Miami in the NFL preseason. Didn't end up panning out, but Cameron Dantzler has been a good player in the UFL since he came over. And then Keaton Ellis, a defensive back. He joins the secondary after some time with Memphis. Showboats in 2025 will be a starter for this football team, and Keaton Ellis should have a pretty good go at it for this team. And then the final team, they got the Orlando Storm. Obviously they had the Orlando Guardians at the original version of the XFL. Another new team in new city. Coach Anthony Becht is the man there after he came over from the St. Louis Battlehawks after a pretty successful tenure there for the St. Louis Battlehawks. I think we talked about that a bunch here. They have so I imagine the San Antonio Brahmas became the Orlando Storm. So this was the the San Antonio Brahmas, and they are now the Orlando Storm. They have DTR as their quarterback. He had a decent run in the National Football League. I guess I wouldn't call it easy. He played for the Cleveland Browns. He did not play well for the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns successfully moved off of him. But he was a fifth-round pick in 2023 and did play a little bit for the Cleveland Browns. But he was an absolute beast in college. Throw for 10,000 yards, 88 touchdowns, along with adding 1,800 rushing yards, along with 28 ground scores. So he has a lot of potential, just never really panned out in the National Football League. So we'll see what he looks like with some good coaching there by Anthony Becht for the Orlando Storm. And then at the skill positions here, we also got to remember the San Antonio Brahmas, also one of the worst teams in the league last year. They've had one win, 1-9. So it's just not a good year at the office for the San Antonio Brahmas. As they gave up the most points in the league. Just a tough road for the San Antonio Brahmas as they try to, hopefully they have a new city and they have a new opportunity to kind of shine there for the UFL this season. So notable skill position, they got Trey Stewart, one of the best prospects, coming over from Jacksonville State, prolific rusher out of 1,600 yards and 25 touchdowns in one season alone. He finished third in the country in rushing scores behind the likes of Anston Genty, a first-round pick. So he had multiple 200 yards games and 5.9 yards per carry in college. Should be an absolute game record, and he gets to stay in the state where he's kind of from. So shout out to him. And then another guy who kind of had his career kind of derailed by injuries, former second-round pick for the Denver Broncos, KJ Hamler. He comes into the UFL, incredibly high profile. He had injuries, but he becomes one of the best wideouts in the league as long as he can stay healthy. He's got speed and route running. Should be an absolute menace at the wide receiver position. And then let's not forget about Chris Rowland, man. Chris Rowland has been kind of a staple for spring football. Mr. Do-It-All himself, Chris Rowland, he's got uncanny hands and extra ability to get open. He's one of the best returners in the UFL, earning all UFL honors as a specialist. He instantly makes Orlando a better offense just by being part of it. Chris Rowland is a good impact football player. And then they have Steve Stellanos at the tight end position. He was one of the few protected by Becht, one of the few Brahmas. I don't know enough about him to really talk about. He's really more of a blocking tight end, but we'll see how they end up using him because he did throw a touchdown last season as a member of the San Antonio Brahmas. And then on the other side of the football, we're going to talk a little bit about the defensive line. We got Jacob Skies, spent last two seasons with the San Antonio Brahmas, played good, consistent football under Wade Phillips. So he did opportunity like in the past season with the Philadelphia Eagles, but just didn't really work out in the National Football League. Isaiah Buggs is another guy, had a brief stint in the National Football League, but he had some off the field issues that kind of kept him out of really reaching his full potential. He joined the Brahmas late in 2025 and became an immediate impact player for the Brahmas as they went on to only win that one game. But he had a pretty good positive impact there. And then at the linebacker position, we got Devontae Beckett, a tackling machine in the UFL. Spent the last 3 seasons in Houston and San Antonio. He should have an opportunity to be a high defensive player. And with Willie Harvey gone in free agency and Mike Rose, this guy's going to be a number one top starter there. Had 89 tackles over 10 weeks last season and led the league in all tackles last season for the San Antonio Brahmas as they look to make the transition into Orlando as they become the Orlando Storm. And then that's right about the nitty of the gritty of it when it comes to the 2026 UFL season preview. I'm just going to give you a couple here predictions real quick before we get up out of the show. Let's first talk about who I think is going to make the playoffs. So my 4 teams to make the playoffs, I'm going to go Birmingham, I'm going to go Dallas, I'm going to go DC, and I'm going to go St. Louis. And that's not, none of those picks are going to blow anyone away. Like those are the best 4 teams in the league last season, and I expect them to be the best 4 teams in the league this season. If we'll see. MVP, I'm going to go Luis Perez. I think Luis Perez will be the MVP when spring football is all said and done this season. Luis Perez will be the MVP, and I think the Birmingham Stallions and the DC Defenders will collide in that championship game, with the Birmingham Stallions winning 3 out of 4 titles, and they go on to win the UFL championship. I know that doesn't sound like very exciting thing, because if you have the chalk, basically, you have the Birmingham Stallions, who've been the creme de la creme when it comes to spring football. They continue to be this season as well. Just a kind of a small guess here. I'm going to say the Louisville Kings get 3 wins. I'm going to guess the Orlando Storm get 2 wins. I will say that the Gamblers get 5, and I will say that the Columbus Aviators get 5 as well, with the Kings and the Storm just kind of being the bottom feeders of the league this year. I think the Dallas Renegades will have the best record in the league at 8-2. And then when it's all said and done, I have the Birmingham Stallions winning the UFL. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. This has been Prime Sports World. This has been our UFL season preview. Thank you very much for joining us. If you have any comments or concerns about the UFL, please write them down in the comments section. And of course, I'm David Huffman, David On Point Huffman, actually. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Also, go check out Christian Simpson's content over there at dailyblitz.blog. We'll be back here tomorrow with the WWE content as we looked at the week that was. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. And here at Prime Sports World, we bring the heat. And here in San Francisco, California, we could use a little less of it. Go out. See you all guys all tomorrow. Be safe out there and take care.